Greetings sailors, welcome back to World of Warships, and today I've got one of my own games, and it's actually quite an old game, comparatively speaking. This is from patch 0.5.0, this is from last September, so it's been a good couple of months that this has been sat on my hard drive. Now, the reason why I picked this out, well, it was an okay game, but it's also interesting to go back to it and have a look at a game from yore, as it were, because obviously I've improved, or at least I like to think I've improved in the intervening months. And it is interesting seeing stuff that I did then that I wouldn't do now, stuff that I would now consider to be a mistake. Now, I've left in the first couple of minutes just because the chat was sort of amusing. Normally I cut out the first kind of 3 or 4 minutes as we get into the action, but in this case the chat at the beginning of the battle was reasonably funny, so I've left all that in, although we are going to cut out about 3 minutes, although there's relatively little jumping around in this replay. Actually, I make one cut of about 3 minutes while we're getting to the action, and then from that point it's just all action, which is quite nice to see in a replay. Now, this was from an era when I was using the spotter plane on this rather than the fighter. I would these days use the fighter. In fact, I do these days use the fighter, just because even though the AA of this ship was buffed with the most recent patch, it's still better to have, because it's still comparatively weak AA. And because carriers, especially at the tiers that the Tirpitz is at, got stronger, having that disruptive capability when you've got dive bombers or torpedo bombers coming in is very, very useful.
Fire on the designated target.
One other thing I'll say about this is I finally figured out how to do screen recording. Hooray! Now, it worked for a little while, and I don't know what about Warships changed, but when we started off, it was you had to do client recording only. And then for a little while screen recording worked, and then it went back to client recording only working. And the thing about client recording is, because Warships replays don't have a little pop-up at the end that says, you know, the replay is over, the replay immediately closes upon the battle finishing. And if you're using a client record function on a screen recorder, on a recording software rather, I've confused probably everybody by saying it that way, but basically what happens is the recording software freaks out because the program it's trying to record has just closed without warning as far as it's concerned, and so therefore it renders your replay or your video file useless. That's really annoying. One of my long-standing bugbears with the replay system, apart from the fact that it's still not officially supported, you should just be able to go into the menu and select a little checkbox and hey presto, recordings replays are enabled, like with World of Tanks. Is the fact that it doesn't have any kind of little pop-up at the end, and the fact that the replays immediately close. In World of Tanks, you get a grace period of a couple of seconds, and then the replay finishes. So even if there wasn't that pop-up in the World of Tanks replays, you've still got a couple of seconds after the battle comes to a close. Doesn't happen in Warships, it's just immediately the replay finishes. So you have to be super, like your timing has to be really good on the stop recording hotkey in order to not just foul up the last 20 minutes you spent recording and then have to do all over again. However, I had a brainwave. There's a little program I've got called a borderless window toggle, which I use that when I'm streaming Warships and tanks. It didn't work with Armoured Warfare for some reason. It screwed things up with Armoured Warfare and I couldn't figure out why. In fact, full screen with Armoured Warfare has been a bit messed up, generally speaking anyway. But yeah, what that does is instead of you running the client full screen, what it does is it kind of makes it look as if it's running full screen, but it's actually running windowed. Now, for some reason, screen recording, full screen World of Warships client does not work. Just doesn't work at all. This is why we've had to use client record up until now. And I say we, all the people that are doing Warships replays are in the same position. But what I can now do is have it basically look like it's running full screen, but it's not actually running full screen, it's running windowed borderless, but maximized to the entire screen. And I've had this program for ages, and like I said, I use it with Twitch, and it's just never occurred to me to try it when I'm trying to record replays for videos. And it works. This is what we're seeing right now. So I can actually walk away from the computer and just leave it recording and not have to be sat there watching it like a hawk to stop the recording at exactly the right moment. Now, as for the actual video quality, it seems a little more stuttery than usual. I can't quite figure out if that is just Vegas or if that's having been recording it full screen, windowed, borderless. I don't know. But either way, it's a solution, and until Wargaming actually fixes the replay system properly so that we don't have this issue of the replays just immediately closing, it's the best solution I've got. So yeah, it might not look quite as smooth as it should do, but hey, it works. So on to the battle at hand. The Tirpitz, the mighty Tirpitz. It's my favourite ship, I think, at least at this point. It's my most played ship. It's my best moneymaker. At this particular, I can't remember how many battles I'd played up till this point, but probably well over 100. Because I was gifted this by, I want to say Ray Lynn, but I can't remember exactly. Basically, when it was on sale the first time, I could not afford it, which has been an issue. Every time it's been on sale, it's been really expensive. So quite fortunately, I've got some very generous viewers, and I was quite happy to have this particular one gifted to me because I really liked playing it when I was doing the preview for Wargaming. And that was one of the things, by the way, that led me to stop previewing new vehicles for a while, because we kept having all of these bundles in both warships and World of Tanks. But anyway, it's a good ship though. It's got a good reload, it's very hard to citadel, it's got very good penetration with its AP shells, and it moves pretty well. However, the things I've done so far in this game, I mean, it wasn't a bad game. I mean, I've already racked up 45k damage, which is not bad. But there's a number of habits that I had at this point that are not necessarily helpful. Now, for one thing, when I'm aiming at an enemy ship, I just stay zoomed in the entire time. And sometimes I'm zooming out to take stock of the situation around me, but tunnel visioning like that in warships is very bad for your health, and I'm already down to, what, 60% health? I also spend far too long sailing broadside to enemy battleships, and that's definitely not a good habit to have. Now, you can get away with it more in the Tirpitz because of its citadel arrangement, or rather its armour arrangement, making it harder to citadel, but it's still a very bad habit to have, and just because you can get away with doing it doesn't mean it's good practice. The other thing that I noticed about this replay in particular was that there are times when I should have been focusing on cruisers in particular, and then switching my focus to battleships once the cruisers were taken care of, but instead my focus was just all over the place. I was just firing at different targets and not really concentrating fire on any one target, and that's, if you can at all possibly do it, it's better to focus a single ship and try and take it down as much as you can. And in this case, that will have meant firing at Targo, because he's quite dangerous to my allies. He's got pretty decent guns. He's got torpedoes to watch out for, and of course, if you knock out the easier to kill ships, that then means that the remaining ships have, there's less firepower coming in your direction. And that's one of the bad points about playing higher tier cruisers, is that people do focus them because they are the easier to knock out targets, and so it can force you into a very awkward play style. Now, this is one of those times where, yeah, look at this. See, I'm just sailing along a bit oblivious, trying to hit the Targo, but I'm giving my broadside to the Tirpitz. I'm not zooming out to check the situation. I'm not zooming out to check for incoming fire. Although I was, at this point, I had the captain's skill that warned me of incoming fire, which is not the most useful thing on a battleship. I don't have that on any of my battleships these days. That's another thing that has changed in the interim. If you just pay attention to what's coming in around you in a battleship, it's kind of a waste of skill points to have it most of the time. There are maybe occasions when it would come in useful, but there are much more useful captain skills to have. So we've successfully turned back that enemy push from the 8, 9, 10 line.
Attention.
And the Tirpitz that's just along the back line there, he's basically the last one left of that push. There's also Hatsuharu in the cap, but for now my focus is, as it should be rightly, on this Tirpitz. However, I'm just sailing broadside to this guy. The fact he's sailing towards me, though, well, there's an off chance that I can get some torpedo damage out of this. Not that he has a lot of health left, but, you know, it would be nice. So, yeah, this is not really an optimal angle to sail at. Although, to be fair to my past self, the fact that there's an island very close does make it somewhat awkward. And he's also not pointing his guns at me, but still, this could be a lot better. So there's a bunch of Hatsuharu torpedoes in the water, and well, he's not got a lot of health, but I just got the kill, so there you go. Those torpedoes turned out to be very worth it after all. As for myself, 70,000 damage, it's not too bad, down to about half health, all out of repairs at this point, so I can't get back any more hit points. And there are still multiple enemies to deal with, but we do seem to have the upper hand at the moment. Now that Tirpitz himself put out torps, but as I was headed away from him, and he was sort of, well, it was not gonna, like, they were never really gonna be in, I was never in any trouble from those torpedoes, is what I'm trying ham-fistedly to say, for some reason. I don't know why. Sometimes it's the simple things, and then, for some reason, I have to search for words to say the simple things, because I'm special like that. So these two enemy cruisers, as long as I don't get too close, I shouldn't be in any danger from their torpedoes. However, of course, they will be trying to set me on fire. The Hatsuharu, it looks like, is also still alive, and of course he's the one that's actually trying to cap, so he's just sat in smoke at the moment. He's really the most dangerous one to me at the moment, but of course I shouldn't discount these cruisers as well. And in fact, something like a Tirpitz, if you're in a Japanese cruiser with those 8-inch guns, in fact, really, the Japanese battleships as well, it's worth firing AP, but only really if they're broadside. And in fact, even some of the 152mm gunned ships, if you can fire AP repeatedly into the superstructure, something like the Mikhail Kutuzov or the Cleveland, for instance, if you've got a good rate of fire, you can still rack up a decent amount of damage that way. But the main threat from these guys probably is HE and fire. However, the Hatsuharu just pops up at relatively close range, well within torpedo range, so I'm going to take evasive action and hope that he goes for the other closer Tirpitz rather than me, which it would be logical for him to do it, because generally you're going to go for the closer target because the torpedoes have obviously got less distance to cover. Now he's put torps out, as you can see, but that allied Tirpitz is quite easily dodging those. So that's fine. I'm also... oh, there we go. Another kill. I actually did alright for citadels in this one. Although a lot of them were citadels, I think... yeah, 4 citadels, and 2 of them were kind of final hit citadels on ships with not a lot of health. So you're not exactly getting the full damage value. But still, this is taking me to nearly 100k damage. Which I was kind of crowing about in the chat, because this guy was sort of chivying us on a bit, and I was... I don't know, a bit tooting my own horn or whatever. I've done 100k damage, yeah, okay, well done, past Jedi, well done, there's no need to crow about it. So we've well and truly won at this stage. That actually, that last couple of hits took me to just over 100k damage. And maybe I can get this Aoba if I get some lucky hits, although he's far enough away now that dodging my shells shouldn't be too difficult. The Hatsuharu is also still in that corner, and the enemy Independence is kicking around somewhere as well. So basically most of this this game was spent in defense of the cap, and it turned out to be a rather nice fight. But in another battleship, if I'd been in the Amagi, for instance, I probably would have died doing what I did in the Tirpitz, just because the sheer amount of time I spent broadside to other battleships, and the number of hits I took when broadside, that in an Amagi, or hell, even in a North Carolina, probably would have killed me just through getting citadel. So, although it's turned out to be a rather nice result, it was definitely not the smartest play ever. And it's actually been really interesting coming back to an older game and seeing how I've come on, because it's funny. At the time, you always think, oh yeah, I've done really, really well, and then, you know, even in a couple of months' distance, you know, the improvement that you can make in that time, it really does make a big difference. And it's been interesting coming back to it and seeing that difference, and thinking, well, these days, okay, now I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that, and that was clearly a mistake, and that was a bit lucky here and there. And yeah, so it is like, that's one of the nice things about replays in general for games like this. You have a good game, or an exciting game or whatever, and it when you're in the flush of the moment, it all seems like, you know, oh, I did really amazingly, and then you go back, and even if it's only like a week later, you'll suddenly think, maybe it wasn't quite that good. Maybe it wasn't quite that good after all. But results-wise, I mean, this was a very nice, profitable game. This is the one I go to. The Tirpitz is the one I go to when I'm grinding credits out, just because it's a very nice, reliable money maker. It's very good at pumping out those credits, especially with a premium account. Now, interestingly, I'm going to end with a little tidbit from from a Q&A translated from the Russian forums that said the Tirpitz and the Warspite are both unlikely to be sold again in the near future, because the last time they sold them both, they sold really poorly. Now, the Tirpitz and the Warspite have both only ever been available bundled, and in the Tirpitz's case, it has been quite an expensive bundle. Actually, having said that, I think the Warspite was available in closed beta unbundled. I think that's the only chance you had to buy it unbundled. Ever since then, it has been bundled. The Tirpitz, on the other hand, that's never been unbundled. So it was interesting to read that they sold really poorly, and that suggested to me and a great many other people that basically they've tapped out the market of people who are A, wanting the ship, and B, willing to pay those really high prices for the ship. Although it did not say what servers they were talking about. It didn't say if it meant it sold globally, sold badly globally, or if it only sold badly on the RU server. If it's globally, though, I absolutely think it's just they've tapped out the market of people who are willing to pay quite that much. I wasn't willing to pay quite that much, and like I said, it was only because I was gifted the thing that I've got one at all. And the Warspite, again, that's exactly the same. Last time it was on sale, it was about the price of a tier 8 premium, more or less, and for a tier 6 ship, no. I didn't want the extra stuff. I felt it was overinflated. I'm not going to encourage wargaming by buying these bundles. So in terms of bundles generally, I mean, you'll be well aware by this point, we have had some very good progress from wargaming. They're now offering things bundled, or just the option of, you know, just the machine and a garage slot, which is very nice. And some of the bundles themselves have actually maybe not been terrible value for money. You know, you get a good value crew, and stuff like equipment and credits, that's always iffy. You know, anything you can buy with credits that you're buying with actual money, I feel that's really poor value for money. But if they're throwing in a bit of gold that maybe you want, or some premium time that maybe you want, or for warships maybe it's a bunch of flags, or there's a really nice captain, sometimes they can be more worth it, but still, yeah, hopefully they learn their lesson. Hopefully next time we see the Tirpitz on sale, or the Warspite on sale, it will be unbundled. Wouldn't that be lovely, wargaming? Wouldn't that be lovely? So hopefully you've enjoyed this slice of past me action, and if you have, you leave in the comments below.